your boy Usas. In this episode of our WhatsApp clone series, we are going to start rolling in our backend solution, and we're going to be going with Firebase to essentially act as our auth provider, our database, and our storage. So we need to do a couple of things in this episode. We need to install the client's SDK dependencies on the Xcode and iOS side of the equation, and we also need to create our Firebase project and enable our email authentication provider. So let's get started. First, we need to jump into a browser, so something like Safari should do. And the first things first is let's install the SDK client packages. So if you go to Firebase, if you Google Firebase iOS SDK, you'll see this GitHub page. And I'm going to copy the link to this GitHub repo. I'm going to jump back to Xcode, and I'm going to add it as a dependency. So if you go File, Add Package Dependencies, and then you paste in the link from that GitHub repo, you will have this option. So we're going to add the Firebase iOS SDK as a dependency for our project. And all we need to do here is just click Add Package. Okay. Sometimes it takes a couple of seconds to a minute, depending on your internet connection, to finally get this process to complete. So we're going to wait for that. Okay. So our Firebase package is almost ready. I'm going to expand this all the way just so we can see what we are working with. And we need a couple of these packages. So the first thing that we need is with the new, I don't know why Xcode sort of made this change. This used to be a checkbox back in the day, and now they just auto-select every single package or for a specific, every single dependency for a specific package, which is sort of annoying. So we're going to go step by step and deselect this. We don't need the combined community. We need the storage, so we're going to keep that. We don't need the remote config. We're going to remove that. We don't need the remote config Swift. We don't need the performance. We need the messaging because we're going to be using that for push notifications. We don't need the machine learning downloader. We don't need the installations. We don't need the in-app messaging, Swift beta. We don't need this one either. We don't need the combine. We don't need the Firebase functions for now. If we do need it later, we can always reinstall it. We don't need Firebase Firestore. We don't need Firebase Firestore combined community. We don't need Firebase Firestore. We don't need Firebase dynamic links. We need Firebase database because we're going to be using the real-time database. So Firebase database Swift, Firebase database. I'm going to remove the Crashlytics. I'm going to remove the auth combined community. We need the Firebase hot. I'm going to remove the app distribution beta. I'm going to remove the app check. I'm going to remove the, whatever the heck that is, analytics without had support. I think that's what that's called. Remove that, remove that, remove that. And so at the end, we have 5 different dependencies, which is the Firebase auth, the Firebase database Swift, the Firebase messaging, and the Firebase storage. Again, I don't know why Apple changed Xcode into this style. I kind of hate this new SPM sort of like UI now. It's ugly. Apple needs to get this shit together. All right, we're going to add our package, and we're going to wait a couple of seconds, let it load up, and as you can see, there's packages on the left side of our navigator now. The next step on the equation, while Xcode does its own indexing and everything, is for us to jump into Firebase. So we'll go to firebase.com. We're going to create a new Firebase project. Let's call it WhatsApp clone. Okay, I accept Firebase terms. I confirm that I will use Firebase exclusively. Continue. Enable analytics for this project. I mean, you can leave it on. Doesn't really matter. Continue. Create project. And wait a couple of seconds for Firebase to spin up your project and do its thing. Okay, our Firebase project is ready. So we're going to click continue. And Firebase is going to take us to this new console. So the next thing we need to do is add a iOS Firebase project. So we're going to click on this iOS icon right here. iOS. And we need to go get our bundle ID, our app bundle ID. So if we go back to Xcode, if we click on our project name right here, and if we go to right here, our bundle identifier, just double click on that. We'll click on this arrow, double click on it, and copy the name, the bundle identifier. Go back to Firebase console, paste that bundle identifier here. The app name, we don't really care about any of that. We're going to register the app. Takes a couple of seconds. We are going to download our Google Info plist. So this is very important. We're going to click next, and then we're going to add Firebase SDK. We did that at the beginning of the project, so we're going to ignore this. We're going to click next, and then we are going to copy this. So let's copy this piece of code. Essentially, this wants us to create an app delegate, which is going to allow us to be able to configure and be able to establish a connection with our Firebase project. So I'm going to just copy all of this code, go back to our Xcode project, and now we're going to go into our WhatsApp clone, the app that has the main annotation, which is the entry point to our application. I'm going to paste the code from Firebase. This looks super ugly, so I'm going to indent it. And then I am going to move this window into the one from Firebase. So remove that, paste that window group right there. And, okay. There we go. That's our WhatsApp clone. And then we need to import Firebase. So import Firebase app, the configure, everything should be good now. So we have our app delegates adapter. Okay. Let's go back to Firebase. Let's click next on our initialization code. And let's click continue to console. Okay. So now we're going to go back to Xcode. Now we need to drag in our Google Info plist, which is exactly what we downloaded while we're registering our Firebase app. So we're going to our downloads. We're going to click on Google Info plist, this file right here. Okay. We're going to drag it right below our main tab view. Okay. All right. So with our Google Info plist being dragged, we're going to click on destination, copy items if needed. This is very important. Please make sure you check that. And also make sure your target is selected, which is the WhatsApp clone. Make sure that is also selected. We're going to click finish. We have our Google Info plist. We're going to expand Xcode all the way. So now we're going to run our application. If everything builds nicely, that means we are good to go. So we're going to run our app on the simulator. Let's see what happens. This might take a couple of seconds because Xcode is trying to index all of the new packages that we recently added. All right. Our simulator is still taking a second. Come on. There we go. And we can tell that Firebase is working because we get this message in our console that says remote notification proxy enabled, And if we go here, if we go to our Firebase project. So now let's go back to our Firebase project, our Firebase console, If we go to our Firebase console, we can see that we actually have our iOS app now. So that means the installation was successful. The next thing that I would like for us to do is to add an authentication. So I'll click on the build. I'll click authentication. I'll click get started. And I'll enable email provider. So I'll click email provider, enable email and password. I'm not going to do the passwordless sign in. So I'm just going to click save. And we are good to go. And so that's it for this episode. And as a quick recap, we installed our Firebase SDKs on the client side. We created our Firebase project on the Firebase portal, and we installed all the necessary info plist and all the things that we needed, like the app delegate class that we needed to make our app work and connect with Firebase. And so in the next episode, we are actually going to start building out our authentication components, which is going to enable us to be able to create a user and sign in a user and all the necessary things that we need before we can start creating messages. So that's it for this episode. Thank you for watching. If you had a lot of fun, please like and subscribe. It means the world to me. All right. See you in the next episode.